What happens when a scientific bombshell turns out to be a total dud? Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a shocking mistake, a media frenzy, and how a critical correction can get completely lost in the noise. It's a perfect case study in how misinformation can outrun the truth. I mean, just listen to this quote. Playing Russian roulette with your brain function. That was the terrifying warning that grabbed headlines everywhere back in 2002. And it came from the head of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the folks who published the super prestigious journal Science. This quote accompanied a brand new study that seemed to change everything we thought we knew about the drug MDMA.
So, okay, what was the science that sparked such a massive panic? Let's go back and look at the original claim. Look, this wasn't just any study. It came from highly respected researchers at Johns Hopkins University, and it was published in one of the top scientific journals on the planet. The paper laid out how they gave MDMA to 10 primates and found that it caused catastrophic brain damage. They were even suggesting a link between the drug and Parkinson's disease. Get this, 2 of the animals even died.
Now, the key here, the really crucial part, was the type of damage they claimed to have found. See, previous research had kind of hinted that MDMA might affect serotonin neurons, but this was the first to claim it absolutely destroyed dopamine neurons. And that was a truly explosive finding, because those are the exact same neurons that wither away in Parkinson's disease. So the findings were terrifying, and the story, well, it spread like wildfire. But then, just as all this panic was really setting in, the story took a turn that absolutely no one saw coming. Exactly 1 year after its celebrated and very widely publicized publication, the entire study was withdrawn. The authors themselves, writing in the very same journal, issued a full retraction. And let me tell you, in the scientific world, that is a massive, massive deal. And the reason why was, well, it's almost unbelievable. This wasn't some subtle error in their statistics or a misinterpretation of complex data. Nope. It was a simple labeling mistake on the vials. It meant the researchers had given the primates a completely different and way more neurotoxic drug. So let's just be crystal clear on this. The shocking link that they found between ecstasy and Parkinson's-like brain damage, it was all based on a mistake. The animals had actually been given massive doses of methamphetamine, meth. The scientific record was now officially corrected. That bombshell finding was a complete dud. But that brings up a really critical question, one that goes way beyond the walls of a science lab. Once a scary story is out there, does the correction ever actually catch up? That's the exact question that researchers Brian Barnett and Richard Doblin wanted to figure out. So they launched a case study analyzing all the media coverage of this exact event to see if the correction ever managed to catch up with the initial splashy story. And their method was pretty straightforward. They just systematically searched the online archives of the 50 biggest newspapers in the United States. They were looking for any articles that covered the initial, alarming publication back in 2002, and then they searched for any coverage of the retraction in 2003. So what did they find? The data they dug up is pretty revealing about how scientific news really travels in the real world. Okay, so first, they found that a little over half, 26 of the top 50 papers, covered that initial scary finding. That's a pretty significant reach. But when it came to the correction a year later, only 20 of those 50 papers covered it. So you can see a noticeable drop, but the next slide is where the story gets really, really concerning. Look at this. Of those 26 newspapers that originally spread the scary, wrong information, nearly half of them, 46%, never published a story about the retraction. Think about that. For the readers of those 12 major newspapers, that Russian roulette story was the last thing they ever heard about it. The record was never set straight for them. And there's more. The researchers found that even when the retraction was covered, it just got less attention. The original stories averaged about 482 words, while the corrections were on average almost 100 words shorter. This suggests the correction wasn't just covered less often, but it was also given less prominence when it was. Now, this gap in reporting, it wasn't just some academic issue about journalistic standards. The uncorrected fear had some very significant real-world consequences that stuck around for years. The fear from this one single flawed study had a huge chilling effect. It might have influenced U.S. drug legislation. The editorial board of the journal Nature pointed this out, but more concretely, it directly got in the way of legitimate medical research.
A really promising trial in Spain using MDMA to treat PTSD was shut down, and similar efforts in the US suddenly faced all these new hurdles, delaying a potentially life-saving treatment for years.
Now, the story does have a positive turn. Despite all the damage and the delays, dedicated researchers, especially through the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, or MAPS, they kept pushing. Today, MDMA-assisted therapy is in the final stages of clinical trials for treating severe PTSD, and it's showing incredible promise. But it really makes you wonder, how much faster could we have gotten here without this costly mistake and its media echo? So, what's the crucial takeaway from all this? This whole case is a really stark reminder about the life cycle of information. It shows us that the first report, especially if it's a shocking one, isn't always the last word. And it leaves us with a critical question about the media's role, and maybe even our own, to always dig a little deeper and seek out the complete story.